Mojang just announced the Mounts of Mayhem game drop in the latest Minecraft Live, and in a crazy twist, the community has mixed feelings about it. In case you missed it, the two main upcoming features are the Nautilus, a rideable, tameable underwater mount, used to ride around underwater because you don't lose air while you're sat on it, and the Spear, a new tiered weapon that has multiple attacks and a charging mechanic which does more damage based on how fast you're going. And just by listing out those features, I've highlighted why I think this drop feels different to previous drops. The Spear and the Nautilus aren't directly related to each other. The Spear's features are well utilized if you're sat on a mount, hence the name of the drop. The two aren't reliant on each other and they operate in different spaces. What I'm seeing in the discussion about Mounts of Mayhem is that generally people are really excited for the Spear, and people are really excited for the Nautilus, but they're disappointed with the drop as a whole, which seems like a bit of a paradox. I'm going to talk about why people think that way, why Mojang might have done that, and how it could actually be a good thing. Before I get into it all, please feel free to like this video and subscribe. I love talking about Minecraft, so if you want to see more of that, then it'll be here. Mojang started releasing game drops in late 2024, and the first fully formed game drop came out in December of that year. Technically, they did have drops come out before this. There was one with the armadillos and the wolf armor, and there was one with bundles and hardcore for bedrock. But I'd consider the drops starting in versions 1.21 and onwards to be the full version of a game drop, what Mojang actually saw them as. As a reminder, the drops so far have been the Garden Awakens, which added the Pale Garden, the Creaking, the Resin, and the Pale Wood, the Spring to Life drop, which was quite broad but up the ambience across all of the overworld. It added things like the animal variants, it added new flowers, bushes, sounds, particle effects, that sort of thing. Just spruced up the whole overworld essentially. Then we had Chase the Skies, which was really cool. It added the Happy Ghast, the Ghastling, the Dried Ghast, the new Flying Mount. And the latest one right now is the Copper Age, which adds the Copper Golem, the Copper Tools and Armor. It's a copper based drop. And most of the features in all of these drops so far are all part of the same whole. There were extra parts to them, like the locator bar came with the Chase the Skies drop and the shelf came with the Copper Age drop, but on the whole they fall into a specific category. Mounts of Mayhem, the upcoming drop, shakes this up, like I said, and I want to talk about why Mojang made this one different. As a disclaimer, these are just theories. I just like to talk. I've not talked to Mojang, I'm not from Mojang, I'm guessing. It's an educated guess. So just enjoy it and comment later on all the ways that I am wrong, because I like to read them. So what does make the Nautilus and the Spear feel so different from each other despite them both being new features? In my opinion, it's because of where they sit in the update cycle. Also, I'm aware of the zombie horse finally being added to survival and being obtainable. I'm kind of leaving it out of this because I don't think it really constitutes a big enough thing to be part of the main drop. So first we're going to look at the Nautilus in detail. And for this to make sense, we have to go back to one of Minecraft's most beloved updates. The Nether update dropped in 2020 and entirely overhauled the Nether dimension. Before it, the Nether looked like this. Everything looked the same, and other than the Nether fortresses that were added in 2010, there wasn't really anything to do. So Mojang went in and made the Nether into something worth exploring. We got a bunch of new biomes with Crimson and Warped Forests, a varying terrain with basalt deltas and soul valleys, and new mobs like piglins and hoglins. Now we're going to go even further back to Update Aquatic. Update Aquatic dropped in 2018 and entirely overhauled Minecraft's oceans. Before this, oceans looked like this. Everything looked the same, and other than the ocean monuments, which were added back in 2014, there wasn't really anything else to do. So Mojang went in and made the oceans into something worth exploring. We got a bunch of new biomes with warm and cold oceans, a varying seafloor with kelp forests and coral reefs, a bunch of new fish types, as well as dolphins, turtles, and drowned. Update Aquatic also did add phantoms, but we're going to just push those over to the side. We don't need to talk about those. Now, it might be hard to spot, but the most astute of you might have noticed the parallels between Update Aquatic and the Nether update. And the even more astute of you might have noticed something I left out when I was talking about the Nether update. The Strider, a new mount designed to explore a very specific terrain and is essentially useless everywhere else. It allowed the player to more easily explore the new overhauled content, and there wasn't a Strider equivalent in the Update Aquatic until now. The Nautilus is also a new mount designed for a very specific type of terrain and is useless everywhere else, and it lets you explore the oceans more effectively. I don't know how much more of the script I can do, which is just me repeating myself. I feel like I'm cheating. I see the Nautilus as the final part of the Update Aquatic that we already already have. Yes, it's 7 years on. Bear with me. We've had mounts for land, lava specifically, and now we also have the sky. And in the Minecraft Live, the Nautilus was directly referenced as the sea counterpart to the Happy Ghast. There was a clear gap for a water mount, both left by the Strider being in the Nether update, and now the Happy Ghast taking the sky mount slot. Adding a water mount makes perfect logical sense in itself. Now for the spear. To me, this is the total opposite in terms of where it fits in. It doesn't fit in. This is the first time a new tiered weapon has been added to the game. Tiered being you can make it out of all the materials, wood, stone, gold, diamond, etc. In fact, it's the first time a new tiered tool has been added at all since 2010 when they added the hoe. It's treading completely new ground in that respect. Mojang have added rare weapons like the trident and the mace, but the melee meta hasn't really changed since 1.9, which went down really, really well. The spear comes with a new velocity-based mechanic. The faster that you're going when you hit the target, the more damage you do. I can't wait to be dispatched by someone going Mach 10 with the elytra. It's the humane way to do it, I think. It introduces weapon use mechanics that we've never seen before. So you can do things like readying it to charge with, which allows you to then do the speed-based damage. And it has a heaviness mechanic, so you can only ready it for a certain amount of time, and it gets harder to do that the higher the tier of weapon. So netherite is heavier than wood. All this is totally new. Obviously, I mean, yes, it's all new to the game. But I mean, like, it's a whole new category in itself. But as of recording, only the spear has been announced. It is not a combat update. There are no other combat changes on the cards right now. So we've looked at both of the new features and how they differ, and that makes the drop different. Usually a drop will either introduce a whole new thing, like the Garden Awakens with a new biome, or the Happy Ghast with a new mount, or it'll finish off an old thing, like making copper feature complete. Mounts of Mayhem does both in two different ways. But why? Why not flesh this out to be another aquatic drop by making the oceans deeper to meet the new Y level? Or why not make it an entirely combat-based drop, bringing in features from the combat snapshots? It's fair to ask these questions. I guess the why I'm asking is more of a why not. Before drops came along, we had updates. Remember those? We had about 20 of them, in fact, in total. Give or take a couple depending on what you constitute an entire update to be. And most of them, like the drops, would be centered around one specific theme or set of features. But occasionally, Mojang would have to release an update which wasn't themed around one thing to tidy up multiple different features. For instance, Trails and Tales. Whenever they did this, it was perceived by the community as not enough. These updates would add a scattering of smaller features across a lot of different areas of the game, and it would prompt the memes and the jabs of Mojang devs being lazy, and they don't understand what the community wants and they don't do anything. I think Mojang wants to make sure that drops aren't like that. So far, they've all fallen into nice, neat little boxes, but too many of those and the community will start putting the same expectations on the drops as they had on the updates. And the backlash from those expectations is part of what caused Mojang to move away from the updates in the first place. I think Mojang have made Mounts of Mayhem into a mix and match of features on purpose. That was a lot of M's, I'm sorry. I think they've done it to establish what the scope of a drop could be. I think the fact that they've already named the drop helps back this up. Every other drop so far has announced their main features and then down the line have then announced the name separately. By naming it now, I think Mojang are trying to help tie the features together in some way. There is a new mount and there is a zombie horse, which is another mount, and the spear can be used on mounts. So it's loosely a mount-based drop. Giving us the name now also kind of defines the limits of the drop. We're not gonna be getting anything major outside of what could be described as Mounts of Mayhem. Granted, Mayhem is quite vague. Mayhem could be a lot of things, but I think they're naming it now just to make sure those expectations, again, don't go running off without them. Because most of the time, with expectations from a 300 million player strong player base, there's disappointment. Defining the scope and the limits of a game drop is helping to avoid the disappointment and avoid the disappointment in the future. I don't think it's unfair to say that the Minecraft community can get a bit doom and gloom. And you might be thinking, okay, cool, that's why they did it, but the upshot is that Mojang are prepping us for less content and smaller content updates. I think we can look at drops being done this way as a positive thing, and here's why. Copper was first added in its barest form in 2021. At that point, it was just the ore and the blocks. They had the aging gimmick. That was all copper did at the time. And now in 2025, with the Copper Age drop, it's just become, I would describe as feature complete. It has armor, it has tools, there is a unique mob made out of copper, etc. Update Aquatic dropped in 2018, and it was a big update in itself. And now Now, Mojang have identified the mount-shaped gap, and because drops don't have to be big, they can just add that mount without having to commit to a whole overhaul. The oceans, ultimately, are varied and have things in them already. They're just not brand new. By not having to define this as an aquatic drop, they don't need to force more aquatic features into the drop. They can just then add something cool and new, like the spear, a thing we've never seen before. And similarly, they don't have to commit to doing a combat drop. They can fix old features, fill old gaps, and do it faster and more often than we've ever been able to, while having continuous player feedback on whatever features they decide to add. So with that in mind, we can now look at existing features in the game that may feel incomplete, and they can be much more feasibly completed. For instance, the ominous bottle was added in the tricky trials update, and it makes for a hard mode version of the trial chambers. We could see a drop in the future that includes hard mode versions of other bosses, without it needing to be an entire boss overhaul. It allows them to add things like function blocks we feel are missing. I know that a lot of people want a wood cutter, which is equivalent to a stone cutter, but making a wood cutting drop doesn't really have a great ring to it, and a lot of extra content around that would probably feel quite forced. There are a lot of features in Minecraft that already exist in some form, but could be improved or finished up, either in a big way like copper was, or in a little way like adding the nautilus to the ocean. Mojang establishing that drops can be any combination of features means that any update becomes worth doing, no matter how small. In the old cycle with large updates, there was pressure that that update had to hit hard every year. And so the little features, the little fixes and gap fills would be pushed to those underwhelming updates that would happen every few years. So while the spear and the nautilus combined might not result in the drop that the community expected, their coexistence in the same drop proves that we'll be able to get things that we want faster and more often than we were ever able to before. And that's basically what I think is cool, and what I've been thinking about since I learned about the update. As always, I love reading your comments in the videos, so please do leave your opinion. And if it's not clear, there's nothing wrong with feeling underwhelmed by an update or an announcement. You care about the game, and that's fine. This is my opinion and my speculation, and wanting to put a positive spin because I have faith in what Mojang does and how they do it. Thank you for watching again. I love doing these videos. I have a lot of thoughts about the update cycle and the drops, so expect more. Again, subscribe if you like the video. I also stream on Twitch regularly, twitch.tv/bekyamon, so if you want to come and talk to me in person, I do talk about Minecraft a lot there too. Follow me on there if you like. All right, I'm gonna go. Bye-bye.